Hey, and welcome to Alchemist.Camp, where we become better Elixir programmers by building things. And this episode, we're going to build out some more of the cowboy-based website that powers Alchemist.Camp, the website. If you haven't been keeping up, we started with a simple cowboy server, and then each episode, or at least most of the episodes, we've been adding more and more functionality that exists in Phoenix, so it's more and more convenient to work with. Last time, we made a router for our OWL framework, which is a fly-by-night clone of Phoenix. And what we did was we basically just made a little bit of a DSL so that the routing in our main application would be really simple. So we're using the OWL router, and now we can write get and a string and name a controller and an action. It's not quite as convenient as what Phoenix does. Notice we are matching, doing pattern matching on the string here for stats, and then passing the name of the stats file off to the controller, but it's pretty convenient at this point. This time we're going to take the next step, which is to make views. So right now, pretty much everything is in our controller. Our controller is essentially a kitchen sink, our page controller, because we only have one controller so far. It's not too unreasonable at first, given that it is handling some special things. Until you get down towards the bottom, you see that it's got its own rendering function in it, which we obviously don't want to put into every single controller we make. Not found is being handled globally, i.e. the page controller is handling anything that's not found. It's the last route in our router, so if we get anything that doesn't match, we just call it other, pass it off to the page controller along with the path, and the page controller is handling not found for us. That doesn't have to change, and that doesn't have to be added to other controllers. Right now, this huge render does have to be, and these should ideally be templates instead of just putting the string right into the response body. So that's what we're going to do today. And let's get started by splitting this render function up. So we'll start by making a view. And this is in our application, not in our framework. And we'll just call it page view. Campsite is still the framework, and then web.pageview. And in this module, we're going to start off just by copying in the render as it is now. So we'll take out this entire render and put it into the page view. And we're also going to need the template path, since that was a module attribute in the page controller. And now let's change this a little bit. So we're rendering with the con and the name, but the view shouldn't really need the con. At least in a normal situation, it shouldn't. We'd really like to just take the name of the template and then the assigns that the template has. And our render is calculating the assigns at the beginning. We'll pull that out, and we'll have the controller figure that out. We'll change this to name and assigns. And then we'll remove this for now, this calculation of assigns. We're getting it out of the con. Then in the controller, we're going to want to calculate what that assigns is. And we're going to handle that from, not from the controller of our application, but from our framework controller. Because this is pretty much abstract code that any web app could call, not just our specific app. So we're going to define a renderer here that takes the con and a template and gets the assigns out of the con and pass that into a render that takes 3 attributes. Con and template are what were available inside of our applications controller. And con template we'll get the assigns out the exact same way we just were. And pass it into a 3-arity render, which we also have to define. And this one is going to take a con, a template, and an assigns. And now we need to get the name of the view module. And the way we'll do that is based on the name of the controller that is using this macro. So we can do double under module to get the current module. And in the case of this being called from within a controller that is expanding these macros, it will be that controller's module name, not the module name of our framework. So the view name is going to be double under module, and then we're going to pass that to atom2string to turn it into a string so we can manipulate it. Then we're going to use regex and match against the end of the string, which should be controller right before the end of the string. For example, if page controller calls it, we want to replace that with page view. Then our view module can be generated by using a utility called module.concat. Elixir and the view name. So this will generate something like elixir.campsite.web.pageview. Since the string that is being passed in is something like campsite.web.pagecontroller, and we've replaced the controller with view, it's campsite.web.pageview, and elixir.campsite.web.pageview is the name of a module, or it will be the name of a module if we have a view that's named appropriately based on the controller. Then we're going to call the render inside our view module. And we're going to pass it in the template, or the template's name, and the assigns. It's going to generate the body that will be returned in the response, and then we'll put that body response into the con so that the view doesn't even have to know about the con. Glue.con is just our poor imitation of plug.con. Okay, so that should do it for this file. So basically we are getting in a render with just a con and a template. Then we extract the assigns out of that render and pass that to our more general function. And this could be reached by explicitly passing assigns to the render from a controller. And that's totally normal. Then we use the name of the module that this macro is being called from to get the name of the view module, and then we call the render on that view module, passing it the template and the assigns, and it will get back a string, which is the body of our response. Then in our page view, we no longer want to pass this, we no longer want to put the body response in the con. We actually don't even have access to the con. We're just going to return the body itself. That's the error case. In the case where there is no error, we just return the body. So, in other words, we don't even need to set the variable. We just EEX eval file, and then get the file from the template path, the name, and EEX. Then our page controller, we don't actually need any of these definitions where nothing is being passed to the con. We can actually just take out these strings and put them into templates, which I have done off camera. So if we look in here, you found the secret page. Look in our our to template. I'm a template 2. The foo template is just a bunch of garbage. Content template is there, as you see. So we'll just delete this right now. And same thing here. 2 is a bit different. So this one does have a message. So we will actually not get a message from the router. We'll just call render. It's got to be the string 2. And we'll just pass it a message like so. The wonderful world of templating. We're just going to add in something to use the message we're passing to it, and message 2. All right, let's fire it up. Okay, and of course that doesn't work because I didn't delete the old line. All right, let's give this another shot. Recompile and generated the app. Okay. I'm a template and the wonderful world of templating too. Excellent. All right. We've broken up the monolithic render that was in our page control. Oh, or have we? Oh dear. Let's get rid of this and try again. We have. Excellent. And one with no arguments works as well. Excellent. All right. So now we can dry it out a bit more. So very little of this code here is actually related to our page view. It's related to page views in general, but we wouldn't want to have to write one of these for every single view, given that we need one view for every single controller. So we're going to use the same technique we did last time. We'll just make a file in our framework that has some macros and generate this code. So we will call this owl view. And then we're going to grab pretty much everything we've got in our view, except for the template path. We don't really want to put that inside the macro because it's going to be a different path for every template, or for every view, I should say. So what we'll do is we'll pass that into the macro itself. So use owl.view, just like we've been using the owl controller, or just like you would use a Phoenix view in Phoenix, and we'll give it a path. Okay, and we're just going to have a variable called path that gets passed into the macro in this path argument. Delete all of that, and then we'll open up the view. I should say we'll open up the view generating meta view. So as before, in order to do the copy paste or the generation of this in all of our files that use it, we need to use using. And the options are just going to be ops. I guess I could have called it args, doesn't matter a whole lot. And path is going to be passed into the ops. Path. Then inside of the quote do, we're basically going to do everything that we had in that render function. Let's see what needs to be changed. So in macros, there are two things that variables are commonly wrapped with, either a var bang or an unquote. If it's something that exists in the context of the macro, like this path that we've defined up here right above the quote, you can get that with an unquote. So we'll do that here. So the path part of the string here that's evaluated is going to be this path. It was quoted, now we unquote it, we've still got it. Now the name is a bit different, and so is the assigns, because those two are not defined in the context of this macro. Instead, they come in the function call. So what we have to do is bind this variable and then access the same variable again. And we'll use the var bang to do that. And do the same on assigns. And we have to do the same when we access it from inside. And that should be all of them. So we'll save that and reload IEX, or recompile IEX. This still works, and 2 also still works. Our actual application only needs 1 line added for each view, and then we have that render functionality built in. Similarly, the controllers just need to use the L controller, and they get all of that benefit as well. Render CSV is more specialized, so is send CSV. We're just going to leave those in the page controller since they're not something that should be injected into every single controller. Get templates, on the other hand, they kind of go with the not found, so we'll leave those here as well. So now that this is done, let's take advantage of this work by making a new controller and a new view for showing these screencast episodes. Because right now, if you go to Alchemist.Camp, there's just a list of links to YouTube. It would be nice if we could show something for each individual screencast and maybe have source code there, have some notes for people that want to skim or they're not sure if they want to watch the video or not. It's obviously a much better experience. So we will go to controllers first, and we'll create a new controller. Episode controller.ex and campsite.web.episode controller, and we're going to use owl controller. Which, because of the stuff we did at the beginning of the episode, should be able to find the episode view if there is one and pass off the render to it and find the templates and so forth. And we need our plug.con clone. And we'll make a show function. And there are a couple ways we could do this. For now, we'll just match a name of the episode. Maybe, yeah, we'll say name, and the name will just be something short that's easy for us to work with. So we'll capture the name out of the call, and then we'll render it. With that done, we need to make a view, and we'll call this episode view. Actually, this has to be the same name or else we'll run into problems. And it's going to be almost the same thing as our existing page view. So I'm just going to copy this like so, paste it in, except change page to episode. And then change the path to be template/episodes. And then add something in the routes for it. So this could be anywhere except the bottom. Other has to be at the very bottom so that it does catch everything that's not matched. We'll just put it at the top. Get, and we'll match on the binary. Episode / and then extract the name of the episode by pattern matching it here. And it's going to use the episode controller and the show action, and we've got to pass the name along. Okay, that should work. All right, there is one other thing. That is, we've got to alias the episode controller. So episode controller and page controller. And now it should be recognized there when we call it. Then we'll make a template and call it l1.eex. Hello and welcome to lesson 1. We'll restart it again here. Oh, I just did restart it. Okay, so we'll load episode 1 and there we go. And if we go to one that doesn't exist yet, then nothing will load. We'll get an error. And that's actually an error that should be handled from inside the show, since the router and everything else is matching. We just don't have anything of that name. So to recap, what we've done here is we've taken a controller that was pretty much a hybrid of controllers and views. We split it apart so that now we can have very lean controllers like this one. And we made some functionality in our framework so that views don't need very much in them either. So we've got all of these macros here. I guess not that many, but we have a render macro here, and we deal with finding the templates and all of that from our framework, so that our actual views just have to use the framework and supply a path where all the templates are. So it's pretty good progress. At this point, it's easier still to go on. At this point, it's easier still to go out At this point, it's gotten quite a bit easier to build out pages for each episode, although it's still going to be a bit repetitive, because now we've got fairly nice view layer and all, but basically just be dumping very repetitive HTML into all of the templates for all of the episodes. And normally I would have no problem doing that. In fact, I probably will do exactly that for several other pages on the site, at least in the short term. But the episodes are a bit different because there are already over 30 of them. I believe 39 of them. So So to recap, we had a controller that had a whole bunch of things in it that controllers would normally have, as well as a bunch of things in it that really should be in a view layer. And we split it apart into a controller and a view. And then we added to our framework and made it so that a lot of things that are independent of which view you're looking at, like say how to render or how to show a compile error for a template, don't have to be in the web application anymore. They're extracted into the framework, so that our views themselves just need to use the framework's view and supply it a path where the templates are. And similarly, we did a bit of the same kind of thing in our controller. We added a render and a render helper to the OWL controller, so that the controller in our app campsite doesn't have to go through this logic to figure out what the name of the view module probably is or handle interfacing with the view. So now we have both a very lean, well, our page controller is not quite as lean because it's got basically every special kind of page that doesn't fit into a normal other controller. But we've got a very lean episode controller, and then we have an episode view that's also very lean. So where we are now is it's pretty easy to just make more and more pages for episode controllers, and we could be passing in the name or passing in some other data through the show, just like we would in a normal Phoenix app. The main limitation of the campsite web app at this point, just from my point of view as a user, is there's no database. So in order to be making pages more dynamic, I mean, I can do it, no problem, but I have to start storing a whole bunch of data related to the episodes, like what their tags are, or I should say what their topics are, the titles, the internal text, and then layout text that gets added to all of them, and so forth. So it's normally I think my first inclination actually was to just push on forward and just make a whole bunch of template files, and that's good enough because I don't want to take too much time away from recording and other things I have to do. But given that there are already almost 40 episodes, it's going to be pretty time consuming, and it's going to be time consuming in the future when I do refactor it, if I don't make something a little bit more stable now. So I probably will make a bunch of pages for the episodes, but refactoring this and pulling from some sort of more reasonable data source is the next priority. Well, I hope you've found this episode interesting, and I also hope that it helps further cement the idea that there's nothing that special in Phoenix. I mean, it's a great project, and I love it a lot, and I'm going to be using it for this site in the future, but there's really nothing magical it's doing. It's just a pretty straightforward accumulation of helpers, and it's just Elixir. And once you see all the pieces working together in a simpler app like the OWL framework, then Phoenix is hopefully going to be a lot less intimidating for you as you dig into it on your own. Till next time, code on.